ブラウさん、おはようございます。先週はどうもありがとうございました。Thank you for last week.
どういたしまして。
Since I know you're from Holland, in Europe,
私はオランダ人です。
オランダとスペイン、occupied Taiwan long time ago. And Holland was in the southern part of Taiwan, Spain the northern part of Taiwan. Eventually, Holland people kicked the Spanish out. This is very interesting to me is why during those years, even Portuguese too, everybody past Taiwan, take a look, a short stay and then leave, short stay and then leave. Why none of any country try to stay there longer?
Yeah, so Holland had the Dutch East India Company. We called it the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, which was the biggest trade company in the world at the time, and the first stock company ever in history, by the way.
Wow.
So every Dutch citizen had a little piece, owned a little piece of the company.
You should be proud of it.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that. And so when people ask me, say, why do you work for Taiwan so long? I always say that since Taiwan, the Dutch, as you say, were in Taiwan from 1609 to 1662, I always say that I want to reunify Taiwan with Holland. Because China claims that it wants to reunify with Taiwan. And we can do it better than the Chinese can.
Even earlier than that.
Even earlier than that. And I'm an international lawyer myself. I can make that case that Taiwan should be part of Holland again. But yeah, so there was a big rivalry, of course, at that time between the Portuguese and the Spanish and the Dutch and the British later on, also a little bit later on, in the Far East, where they would really pretty much steal stuff. You know, it was not really very fair. And so maybe, you know, they were taking advantage of all these small countries and trading with the natives. But the big difference between the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the Dutch is that the Portuguese and the Spanish said, we are here for religious purposes.
Yes.
We want to make everybody Catholic or Christian. And the Dutch said, we're only here to make money.
Business.
And so when the Japanese locked up or closed the country, the Sakoku, when they closed the country for about 200 years, the Dutch were the only ones who were allowed to trade with the Japanese, who were allowed to stay in Japan. And so the Dutch traders went to the shogun and said, we want to trade port in Nagasaki. And the only thing the shogun did was open his fan. And the Dutch understood that maybe they should build a little island in Nagasaki harbor in the shape of a fan. And that turned out to be that way, as a matter of fact. And so Deshima Island was the trade post. Yeah.
What about the Kagoshima at that time? I think British and everybody go to Kagoshima too.
Yeah, but that was later. So the Dutch were in the early 1600s, and the British and the Americans, they came in the early 1800s. So that's 200 years later.
I see.
When Commodore Perry, you know,
yes,
Matthew Perry, black ships,
yeah.
they opened up Japan, but the Dutch were there. And I think it's always a little bit funny that the Dutch were not shy about saying, we are here to make money. In the stock exchange in Amsterdam, there's a big line goes all around the building, and it says, for the love of gain, the white world's harbors we explore. So the love of gain was nothing to be embarrassed about.
That's true.
And so when one very interesting point is that in Deshima, on that little island that the Dutch had in Nagasaki harbor, on every threshold there was a carving of Jesus on the cross. You know that story?
No, that's the first time.
Yeah, there was a carving of Jesus on the cross. And every morning the Japanese soldiers came to Deshima Island and asked the Dutch traders to stamp
Oh yes,
on
that
the
story.
cross.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
on Jesus
yes.
on the cross.
Right.
And the Dutch traders did that, but the Portuguese and the Spanish could not do that.
No
because
kidding.
They believed too much. in God and in Catholicism and
It's
in
a good or
religion.
bad, Mr. Blaauw?
I think it's a bit funny.
Be practical.
It's very practical. It's Dutch style, no nonsense. Just like Donald Trump.
I think the religion, everything is in your mind. It's not from the outside what you show. So at that time, maybe Dutch people think, well, I step on it, but in my heart I said,
Yeah,
I'm so
maybe too.
sorry.
Yeah, maybe
My
too.
God,
Gomen Nasai.
forgive me. But as long as you can reach your goal, whatever you want to do
Right.
in this country,
Yeah.
that's the purpose.
Yeah, yeah. Good point.
No
Dat de mooie
kidding.
ii.
So Taiwan size is about Holland size.
Yes, exactly the same size. So yeah, let me get back to that trading or the early connections with the Spanish and the Dutch. And so originally the Dutch went to the Penghu Islands, which are the
Yes,
Pescadores
separate
Islands.
island, yes.
It's in between China and Taiwan, exactly
yes.
in the middle. And they wanted to build a fortress and they wanted to build a trade post, but the local chief of the local tribe said, if you stay here, we will fight you to the death. But if you sail 50 miles more to the east, there's another island.
You can
and
go
why
there.
don't you just go there and
Really?
and we will leave you alone. And they said there's not a lot of population there, and they're all nice people and
Fishermen.
aboriginals, fishermen. And so the Dutch went to Amping, which is in today's Tainan, and they built a fortress there.
I went there before, and the Teiseko
Yeah.
is the one supposed to kick the Dutch people out
Yeah.
from southern part of Taiwan.
Yeah.
But
So
then before that, Dutch already kicked Spanish out from northern part of Taiwan, right?
yeah, there was all there. The Spanish built a fort in Tam Shui, which is a northern city in
Yes,
Taiwan.
beautiful town there.
And they built a red fort, and so there was, of course, the rivalry. Mayumi was not just in Taiwan, but it was all over the world. It was in the United States. It was in America. It was in England. There was battles fought in South America. You know, where there's a famous Dutch story, which we still have songs about in Holland, where a Dutch captain stopped the Silver Fleet, the annual armada of Spanish treasures go from South America, gold, silver, bullion, to back to Spain, and we took over that fleet, and we still, 400 years later, we still sing songs about. But so there was a lot of rivalry, of course, in the north of Taiwan, in the south of Taiwan. There were skirmishes. There were always also problems with the Aboriginals, who, of course, didn't like these Dutch guys take a piece of land and just claim that it was theirs and build a fort. So the Dutch were always under siege, and I have a book with all the records of that fort still in my office today, which I bought, with the daily records of all the adventures that the Dutch had there at the time.
I see. So totally almost 60 years that
Yes.
then Dutch occupied Taiwan.
Yeah.
So
And then they were
actually
kicked
it's
out.
longer than Japan occupied Taiwan. Japan only 50 years.
50 years, that's right, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Never put the two and two together, but that's true.
Right. But at that time, interesting me is Dutch government never tried to claim that this island is mine. That's very interesting. After commercial, can you tell me why?
Yes, I
Thank
will.
you,
Yeah,
arigato.
yeah.
Blaauw-san, occupy or staying in that small island for 60-some years and still never claim that this is mine. And I'm very curious about those years, those people's mentality. They never try to claim that that's their island.
No, it's a very good point. And it, again, happened all over the world, where the Dutch were, as you said earlier, so they're very practical. The Dutch were very practical, so they only took what they needed. They didn't want to conquer a whole country.
I see.
Like the British, who planted a flag in India and said, this is our country.
Right.
But the Dutch also had a lot of little harbors and trading posts on the Indian coast in the beginning.
Indonesia, right?
And Indonesia.
Yes.
Now that they took, the whole country of Indonesia, supposedly with 50 guns and 2 ships.
Right.
But in the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, also the Dutch had all these little trade posts for fresh water and for fruit for their ships, which sailed to the Far East. And the same with Amping in Tainan. They traded with the locals pelts of deer pelts, and because they sent it back to Holland to make hats and coats, and so that was the biggest commodity at the time in Taiwan to sell. From the local tribes would bring pelts and deer pelts, and same in New Amsterdam, which is today New York. So they also had deer pelts was the biggest commodity, and beaver pelts.
Right. So Holland people, maybe it's not the nation or not the race or people that try to conquer somebody, take over somebody and become mine, that kind of mentality, maybe never had.
Maybe, and yeah, but on the other hand, as you just mentioned, Indonesia, Mayumi, Indonesia was such a huge country from Seattle to Miami, stretching from Seattle to Miami. It's such a long, it's the same size as the United States. And they felt that that could be the trading center of the whole Far East. And so we established a trading town in then called Batavia, which is today called Jakarta.
Yes.
Where my father is born, by the way.
Really?
He was born, and my mother was born also in Indonesia, in Bandung. Yeah. And so
where were you born?
I was born in Holland, in Haarlem.
I thought you were born in Taiwan.
No, I'm born in Haarlem, which is Haarlem, New York, is named after my hometown of Haarlem, Netherlands.
Hi, understand.
But so, we conquered Indonesia, but the other posts, as I said, they were just for practical purpose. And, it was probably not a good time, these colonial age. We call it the golden century in Holland, the 17th century. But I'm always fascinated about how this little country, which is the same size as Maryland and Delaware combined, that it was close to ruling the whole world, in Japan, in Taiwan, the whole of Indonesia, all these other, the whole America. There was a new Netherlands colony stretching from the Connecticut River to the Delaware Bay that was all ruled by that little tiny country, and people who would go in ships the size as a walnut and sail for 9 months to get to the other side. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable, that's right. What do you think about the Holland right now, the whole country's situation? What do you look at it since you're in America?
I'm in America, and I lost a little bit touch with everything that's happening in Holland. But I long for these good old 17th century days when Holland was a force to be reckoned with. And today, it's a great country. It's a beautiful country, and I recommend everybody to visit there. But it's swallowed up by the European Union, of course. So and there's a lot of. It's a bit depressing, but just like in any European country, all the immigration debate is going on and on.
That's right. Holland,
and
a lot of immigrants.
Yeah.
You had a problem there too?
Oh, yeah.
That's right, that's right.
And there's some extreme right-wing party, and but on the other hand, we have a democracy of multiple layers. We have about 30 political parties.
30?
Yeah, unlike in the United States,
with
where there's only
country.
2. Yeah, 2 or 3.
No kidding.
And we even have an animal party. It's called the Party for the Animals.
I love that.
And my mother votes for the Party of the Animals.
Really?
Yeah, because she says, I don't care about all the other nonsense, and I love animals.
Right.
So that's why, but it's a beautiful country. It's a beautiful democracy, and I'm always very proud, especially when the Dutch national soccer team plays in the World Cup.
Yes.
The Orange Devils. Yeah. So no, it's a great country. You've not been, right?
I try. I mean,
Okay.
I wish someday
You
I can
should.
visit
Yes,
because
let
I
me
know
know.
Holland is a neutral country like a Switzerland.
Not that
Not
neutral.
that
No,
neutral.
no, no. It's not neutral, but it's a NATO ally, and it's
Oh,
a
yeah,
prosperous
that's right.
country, and it has the tallest people in the world, supposedly. Also, the happiest people in the world. Did you know that? The
Yes.
tallest and the happiest people in the
Yes.
world. And so I would
And
recommend highly.
environment conscious people too.
Environment conscious people. Everybody rides a bicycle. Everybody eats cheese. We don't all live in windmills, but it's a fantastic country. And I go there every 2-3 years because my
Really?
family still lives there.
How many population do you have in that nation?
Yeah, so Taiwan is the same size as Holland, and Taiwan has 23 million.
Right.
We have 16 million, 1/6.
Really?
So I think in the 50 years ago, school children learned that Holland was the most populated country in the world, but that has changed now. The most densely populated country in the world, but that has changed now, and I think Taiwan already took over. And just like in Taiwan, everybody lives on the west coast of the country, just like in Holland, like Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague.
Do you see a lot of Japanese tourists going to your country too?
We do all the time. Yeah, yeah. The people in Holland love Japan, and you know, I told you earlier when we were not filming that I love Japan too. It's my favorite country in the world. I love Japanese art. I collect ukiyo-e that I mentioned to you.
My goodness.
Yeah, I collect ukiyo-e, and I've been collecting since I was 18 years old.
No kidding.
And the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam and the museums in Holland, they all have treasures
Of
which
Japan?
are comparable to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts or the Metropolitan in New York. They have huge collections of Japanese art, and so I've always been fascinated by Japan. My father was an airline pilot for the KLM when I grew up, and so he would take me when I was 10 years old to Japan and stay there for a week with him, go to Hakone, go to Kamakura, go to, you know, Tokyo Tower at the time was interesting
yes.
to me. And so I've loved Japan and I love Japanese food, and I even worked as a waiter in a Japanese restaurant during my law school time in the Okura,
Really?
Okura
Hi,
Hotel
Okura Hotel.
in Amsterdam.
The first class hotel.
Yeah, and I was the only gaijin white waiter in the Japanese restaurant. So I had the best time of my
Japanese
life.
too.
Yeah, and that's how I learned Japanese a little
Really?
bit. Yeah.
ありがとうございます。After commercial, I would like to ask your point of view in the future of your country, Holland, America, Taiwan, Japan, everything. See how you picture these four countries.
All right.
どうもありが
Thank you.
とう。ブラウさん。When you were a child, you went to Japan. You know Japan very well, and then of course you were born in Holland. And then when you grow up, you begin to realize Taiwan, the history, the Taiwan and your country, and now you live in America. And it's kind of very interesting for me that through all these years, what do you picture United States, Japan, Taiwan, and your country?
Yeah.
Oh, together as a one unit,
Right.
if possible.
Yeah. So my wife is from Taiwan, and as we say in Taiwanese, Guashi Taiwan Kiasai. So I'm a Taiwanese son-in-law. Yeah. But the
上手ですね。
yeah. So I always say to my wife, we have the best of 3 worlds.
Yes.
Because I was born in Holland, came to the United States, and I go to Taiwan because my wife is from Taiwan. So I had learned 3 worlds. You know, I'm always glad that I just didn't stay in Holland and just, you know, I miss my family, but I talk to them all the time, and so that's fine nowadays. And so I always hope that Japan, as I said, it's my favorite country, and I would like to see Taiwan be more assertive and step up to the plate and be more clear in their dreams and goals. I think with the United States support and the United States backup, that Japan should play a stronger role in the region. And of course, we all remember that World War II, but that's 70 years ago. There's a new Japan now, and Japan should be a guardian of democracy and a guardian to protect these smaller countries that they feel an affiliation with.
So
They feel that they're like Taiwan. It's a democracy, and we need each other. We need to help each other.
So you don't think Japan is doing her share enough?
No, I don't think they're doing enough at the moment. And
because they're so afraid of her neighbor countries that remember 72, 73 years ago what you have done to my country. And every time when they bring that one up, Japanese people go, oh, I'm sorry. Still, what do you think of that?
As I said, maybe I can tell this story, Mayumi, is that my mother was in a Japanese concentration camp in Indonesia.
Really?
In World War II, yeah, from 1940 in Bandung in Indonesia, with her mother and her sisters, and her older brother was already sent to the men's camp because he was 12 years old.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but my mother doesn't hate Japanese or doesn't care. She loves the Japanese, and she loves the Japanese. And so, as you say, that's 72 years ago, so we should move along. And interestingly enough, my grandmother, when I one time invited a friend from the Okura Hotel, where I worked as a waiter in the Japanese restaurant, he came to my house, and my grandmother didn't want to sit next to him, didn't want to look at him during dinner, to the Japanese boy, because she was traumatized by what happened, at that time, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And so I always feel that we should move on, and it's hard for me because I didn't experience something like that, something so traumatic. But times are changing. We need to move on, and that's why I think Japan should be a bigger player and don't be bullied, because I know that the Chinese are always bullying the Japanese.
Yes.
And the Chinese bullying the Taiwanese, and the Chinese are bullying even the Dutch. Like when I went to law school, I wrote my thesis about Holland selling submarines to Taiwan in 1981. And then China broke off diplomatic relations with Holland to show to the rest of the world what can happen if you become too close to Taiwan. When the Dalai Lama wanted to visit Denmark a couple years ago, Chinese started bullying the Danish. And just 2 days ago in the London School of Economics was an art installation where a map displayed China and Taiwan in different colors. And now the London School of Economics is being harassed by the Chinese and by Chinese students. They say, we have to fix that artwork.
Gee.
So the Japanese should stand up and be proud and be assertive and help other countries. Stop the isolation.
Yes. Do you think Japan treat Holland, or Holland treat Japan pretty fairly, or?
They have absolutely great relationship.
Is that right?
Yeah, wonderful relationship for historic reasons also.
Yes, yes.
There are always Japanese scholars who go to Leiden University, which is a famous Japanese collection, where the scholars do research about the old 17th century time of the Dutch in Deshima and in Japan. So I think the Dutch have the biggest collection of Japanese history outside Japan. Really?
I remember you have a royal family, right?
Royal family, yeah.
Yes, in your country.
Yeah, we do, king.
And we have a royal family
I
too.
know.
So I think once a while, your royal family visit our royal family, and our royal family visit yours.
It's true.
Yes, and I believe they have a very strong tie toward each
I think
other.
it's about 2 years ago that the King of Holland, Alexander,
Yes.
that he visited the emperor in Tokyo.
Yes.
In the presidential palace.
Yes, and the current people organization where everybody, the mutual understanding, mutual communications is very precious, and especially the long time ago, Holland played so much important role in Asia, Japan and Taiwan, and I personally hope that the Holland will continue to play the very important role for Japan and Taiwan as well.
Exactly. I have the same dream, so I think we're.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So, ブラウさん、お体に気をつけて、ワシントン DC で続けて、日本と台湾とオランダのために頑張ってください。
どうもありがとう。
ありがとうございました。
Hope to see you next time when I'm in this area.
Yes, please let me know.
All right.
ありがとうございました。Thank you.
Thank you.